This season has felt so wrong, but this game felt so right. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R for another Seattle Kraken win over the Anaheim Ducks, this time 3-1 in Anaheim. It is the first game the Seattle Kraken have ever played, though, without Adam Larsson, who misses the game for personal reasons, likely the birth of his first child. Also, Vince Dunn out with injury, so the top pair for the first time ever completely out of the game. Mostly just because Larsson's missing his first game ever, and I guess for what it's worth, the Kraken are now undefeated without Adam Larsson. I don't know, something to think about. Beyond those two absences, though, with Cale Fleury stepping into Larsson's spot and Riker Evans taking over Dunn's, well, the pairings were all over the place, but either way, there were a couple of other changes in the lineup as well. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare steps in for his first game in a little bit here. And we still don't get to see any more of Winterton or Morrison, but we still do see Shane Wright continuing to stay on that second line as the center, or whatever number you want to give that line of Wright as the center of Eberle and Schwartz. The one kind of surprising constant in this game, and really over this whole road trip, is that Philip Grubauer starts his third start in a row for the Kraken after they'd gone every other between he and Decord for quite some time. It's a little bit weird that it made sense to give Grubauer the start against LA so that he's not just playing against the bad teams and does get a start against a better team like the Kings. But then to start him again here against the Ducks instead of Decord, I don't really know what the point of that is, but he had a pretty good game once again for the Kraken. I suppose it's back to Hackstall just riding whoever's playing the best at the time, and well, Grubauer's been playing pretty well here of late. And it's a good thing he was playing well, because right out of the gate in the first period, well, maybe not right out of the gate, it's a bit back and forth without too much going on for the first few minutes, including a Kraken power play that really doesn't go much of anywhere. It's the Ducks, so you know the Kraken are going to get more chances on the power play, and they do later in the game. The first power play, though, is pretty much nothing for the Kraken. Eventually the Ducks end up on a power play, and while they too aren't able to score on it, they do start to get some momentum, and Grubauer has to come up with a few pretty big saves, including one on that power play where he kind of loses his balance as he reads a one-timer from Zegras pretty well, but on his way to the side of the net, falls over on his butt, still makes the save with his glove, and it turns out to make it look a little bit more spectacular than it probably had to. Kind of like when, to use a baseball reference with it being that season, even though the Mariners have not gone off to a great start, but it's kind of like when an outfielder dives somewhat unnecessarily for a ball. I suppose in this case for Grubauer was an accidental dive, so it would be like if an outfielder tripped and still managed to catch the ball while diving. Either way, it does make this save look a little bit more special than it probably needed to. Still a fun moment, he makes another good save. And then finally in the back half of the first period, as if to reward Grubauer for his hard work there in the middle part of it, the Kraken finally start to turn things back towards the Ducks' end of the ice like you'd kind of expect them to. They're certainly a better constructed team than the Ducks are. They start to get some momentum, and eventually it's a shot on goal by Oliver Bjorkstrand that goes through traffic and is tipped into the net to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead. And coming out of the pile first and going down the high five line, which is usually a pretty good sign of who the guys think got the goal, it's Shane Wright picking up his second goal in 3 games, so not quite as many games, but his second goal since coming back up from the AHL and third in his NHL career. And it really was a good play from Wright, too, to be able to work around the defenseman that was plastered all over him and pick the right time to go towards the goal, get his stick out, and perfectly put it on where that puck was flying through the air to get it into the side of the net, not giving Dostal much of a chance to make the save. And actually following that goal from Wright, as his entire line gets out on the ice for the faceoff, he nearly scores again as the Kraken get right back in the offensive end and try to make it 2-0. This time Dostal comes up with the good save in tight. So that gets the Ducks mercifully to the first intermission, down just 1. The Kraken, though, after a little bit of a warm-up in the first minute of the second period, pick up right where they left off, back down in the Ducks' end of the ice, but on the other end of the ice this time because it's flipped for the second period. It's that same line out there for the Kraken, the whole line this time with Eberle and Schwartz. They work the puck around as Wright is just kind of hanging around in front of the net, waiting for something to happen. Eventually, Schwartz fires it up into the slot where Wright is waiting with his stick on the ice, where he shovels it past Dostal with not a lot of space that Dostal was giving him to put it past him, but finds one of the gaps and into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead, and Shane Wright his second goal, not only now on hat trick watch, but natural hat trick watch, as he's already doubled his NHL goal total. in just this game. And honestly, at this point, the Kraken pretty much dominate the rest of the game as far as flow of play is concerned, and certainly have the vast majority of time with the puck. Ever since that power play for the Ducks in the first period, things really turned the Kraken way and never look back, which continues to be the case into the middle part of the period, where eventually the Ducks, who are not having a lot of luck hitting the puck, decide to just start hitting Kraken players instead and sending themselves to the penalty box. And it's late in that first Kraken power play of the second period, the second one of the game, though this one already has gone a lot better than the first power play did. They've actually gotten some shots on goal, and eventually with that second unit out on the ice in that back part of the power play, a second unit that does feature a lot of the core pieces of the Kraken future, like Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, Riker Evans as the quarterback, but it's Oliver Bjorkstrand who gets it down to Shane Wright in that Eberle spot as they try a similar play to what they've been scoring on lately, where then Shane sends it right through the slot to the far side, but it never gets to the far side. It goes off of bodies in front and into the back of the net to give the Kraken their third goal of the game, and it looks like possibly Shane Wright has picked up his first hat trick, and a natural hat trick at that, which I think would be the first natural hat trick in Kraken history, but it doesn't end up coming out that way anyway, as the puck ends up going off the skate of Matty Beniers in front of the net and through the 5-hole of Dostal. So Beniers picks up the goal, Wright his first assist of the season, still a 3-point night for Wright, and even if it's still Beniers' goal, he basically banked it off of someone to get it into the net. Either way, a fantastic game from Shane Wright still halfway through the game, and plenty of chance to still get that hat trick, even if it's not going to be a natural one if it does happen. And you know what, even if it would have been fun to see Shane get this goal and get the hat trick, it turns out to be a pretty fun goal anyway, with it being Matty Beniers' 14th of the season, but 100th career NHL point. Now, obviously, since you've already seen the final score, you know that these are the only 3 goals the Kraken get, so Shane never ends up getting the hat trick in this game, though it will likely come over the course of his career if he continues to play the way he did in this game. A constant pest around the net, and that is a place you can score a lot of goals. Just look at what Zach Hyman has done in Edmonton this year. If you are very good at being in that area, and shoot, Joe Pavelski has made a career of tipping pucks in from there as well. So Wright, if he can continue to play this way, look confident out in front of the net, he's going to start scoring a lot of goals, hopefully as early as next season. And again, even though Wright didn't score this third goal, it's still nice to see that it was the other hopeful future star center for the Kraken in Matty Beniers, as their young players really came out to play in this game and ended up making all the difference. Of course, Grubauer's not as young, but as far as the offensive side of the ice is concerned anyway. Anyway, getting back to the game, even though the Kraken don't score again in this game, they are given a few more pretty good chances by the Ducks, who just love playing on the penalty kill. And I suppose, to be fair, they did score twice on one penalty kill in the last game the Kraken played against this team. Either way, the Kraken end up getting a power play almost immediately after Beniers scores on the power play, and then midway through that, they go to 5-on-3 for round about a minute, which they aren't able to score on. Not only the 5-on-3, but either end of the power play of those 2 overlapping power plays. And then, as if to point out even more what a wasted opportunity that was with the overlapping power plays for the Kraken and not able to score on it, right back the other way for the Ducks after those power plays come to an end. They are unfortunately able to break up the shutout for Grubauer, as it's just a beautiful play by Leo Carlsson, the rookie for the Ducks. So sticking with the theme of young players scoring in this game, and for everything that went well for Wright in this game, and even played pretty well in the defensive end, except for this play, he does get a bit juked out of his jock by Leo Carlsson on this play. As he has the puck coming into the offensive end, Wright goes to challenge him, and then Carlsson just passes it behind himself out into open ice. Wright is left standing there thinking, wait, what just happened? Carlsson skates into the open ice, fires off a perfect shot that beats Grubauer up high, and it gives the Ducks their first and only goal of the game to make it 3-1. The Kraken, to their credit, do push back through the last couple minutes of the third period, trying to re-extend the lead, aren't able to, and we head to the third, where honestly not much of anything happens in the third. The Kraken do, I suppose, try a couple of times to get Wright a third goal, but for the most part, they seem pretty content with just practicing holding a lead in a third period, which I suppose is not a bad thing to practice, and they are able to do that pretty well, as the Ducks really don't get anything going offensively in this period, even when they do go empty net, which does not last very long at all, as they end up committing a penalty, so the Kraken go to a power play, they have to put their goaltender back in, and that basically ices away the rest of the game as we get to that final score of 3-1. So in the end with this one, it's a very entertaining game to watch from a fan perspective, at least the first 2 periods anyway. The third period was kind of just waiting around to see if Wright could complete the hat trick. Obviously that doesn't happen, and really nothing of any interest happens in the third, but there's at least the intrigue of the possibility of that happening at some point. And I suppose the fact that Carlson did get that goal in the second period made the possibility of the empty net certainly an option for a way Wright could score that third goal. Now, when they did eventually go empty net, at least for the little bit before the last Kraken power play, they don't actually put Shane on the ice, so take that for what it's worth. They never really even get a chance on the empty net. I suppose they did put one wide for an icing. Doesn't really matter. Still a fun game to watch, even if it does cost the Kraken a little bit in the standings, as they do jump over the New Jersey Devils in the draft order, which is to say they go below the Devils in the draft order, passing them by 1 point in the standings. And now that there's 7 points clear with less than that many games left of teams like Ottawa, Arizona, who they're about to play, and Montreal, it's pretty unlikely they're going to catch any of them. So it's really just whether or not they can repass the Devils, as well as the Calgary Flames, who lost to this Ducks team. Either way, we'll handle that when the time comes. Probably will be doing a stream on this channel, by the way, of the draft lottery, as even if it's small odds, there's always a chance the Kraken could win one of the top 2 picks, and that'd be kind of fun. Regardless of all that, though, honestly, I'd rather see the Kraken take care of a team they should be able to take care of, rather than lay another egg here at the end of the season and just put that little extra sour taste in your mouth of losing to a bad Ducks team in the final few games, especially considering they have some pretty good teams that are headed towards the playoffs coming up that would be reasonable losses that they could still play well in those games and come away with the help they need in the standings, if you will. Although, I say that, they actually have Arizona and San Jose as their next 2 games, so it's not like it gets that much harder for another couple games. Then they get 4 games against teams that are above them in the standings, and yeah, play well in those games and lose. I think you can play a respectable game and still lose to the last 4 teams that they're going to play. As for this game specifically against the Ducks, I don't really know what else there's to say about it that I can't just get over in the Kraken 3 stars, so let's head to the 3 stars, as always brought to you by patrons over on Patreon, where if you do want to help decide these Kraken 3 stars after the remaining games this season and all the games next season, as well as helping decide the Kraken awards on this channel at the end of the season, you can help support a little bit more than you already are by watching to this point by going to the link on Patreon down below and supporting over there. The first star of this game obviously is Shane Wright, 2 goals and a primary assist where he puts it off of Benir's skate and into the net, so and not a hat trick, but pretty close 2-1 for Wright. An absolutely fantastic game, building off of having played pretty well in the last 2. Like I said in the last one, he wasn't super noticeable against the Kings, but that is a team that, when they're playing at their best, it makes it pretty hard to notice anybody super positively in the offensive way, and Shane definitely didn't make any bad mistakes defensively in that game that cost the Kraken, which against a team like the Kings is kind of good in its own right when you're talking about a player as early in their NHL career as Wright is. Still, in the last 2 games that he's played against bad teams, the Ducks and Sharks, he's come up with goals, 3 goals in 2 of those games, and he's really looked like he's belonged since stepping up back here to the NHL level, which honestly it kind of felt like he did when he was up earlier on in the season, but it's even more apparent now here at the end of the season, and obviously 3 goals and an assist to show for it. Now it certainly helps that he's finally getting the ice time in order to make a difference, as well as playing on a line with Eberle and Schwartz to help set him up for that offensive production, but he is clearly more than belonged and in fact at times been driving that line's production. So for anyone that was wondering where the Shane Wright that they drafted went and all the hype that was around him, well, this game might be a taste of that, especially considering that second goal that he scores off the pass from Schwartz is a perfect example of what really got him noticed through his junior career. Is although he still does have a pretty good shot, the way that he scored a lot of his goals was having a knack for putting himself in the right place at the right time to be able to score goals and get passes from teammates, which he does perfectly there on that goal from Schwartz. And even to some extent on the goal from Bjorkstrand, which is just a beautiful tip, and if that's something he can add to his game at the NHL level anyway, obviously he's been able to do that throughout his career, but to have that hand-eye coordination and be able to tip pucks in while being a pest out in front of the net, it's something the Kraken could certainly use more of, and if he can continue to do that well at the NHL level, he will easily fit in as a first or second line center next season. And of course, until then, it'll be fun to see what he can continue to do in the final 3 games he'll play at the NHL level before going back down, so as to not waste a year of his entry-level contract. He can only play 9 games at the NHL level before that 10th game would use up a year of the entry-level contract and start that whole process. That'll get going next year, but he'll play 3 more games at the NHL level, and then obviously be a big part of the Firebirds playoff run as they're already locked into a top seed in the AHL. Moving on though to the second star, for me it has to be Philip Grubauer. He also had a pretty good game, and sure, it wasn't the busiest game, just 17 shots against him, but he made a number of pretty good saves, even if one of them made a little bit more fancy than he needed to. Still a great game from Grubauer, really kept the Kraken in the game early on as they were a bit rusty there to start this game. And while this Ducks team is not the most talented from top to bottom, they certainly do have some offensive talent there when they're allowed to do their thing. Trevor Zegras, obviously, Leo Carlsson, we saw the talent that he has with that play to get the Ducks their one goal, as well as guys like Killorn, who won 2 Stanley Cups with Yanni Gordon, Tampa Bay, and a number of other guys, so it's not like this is a team that's basically AHL players, like with the San Jose Sharks, for example. And then with the third star, I'm kind of torn here between really 2 options, but there are plenty of guys that had great games in this one. Brian Dumoulin actually had a pretty good game after a not so bad game in LA, so weirdly strong little stretch here for him. And obviously Cale Fleury played pretty well. I wouldn't say extremely noticeable. He had somewhat limited ice time, but he played well in the ice time he did get, stepping in for Larsson's absence, as well as Dunn being out again with an injury, hopefully not for too long, or honestly, at this point, if they need to just rehab him over the season, do that so he can come back fresh next year. Either way, the guy I'm going to go with, and it was really between he and Beniers, but I am going to go with Oliver Bjorkstrand. He has 2 assists in this game and continues to play fantastic hockey for the Kraken. Really one of the few players on the team that's had a better season than last year, and we'll get to that with the season recap once all is said and done in late April, but Bjorkstrand just building off of a great season, 2 more assists to get closer to 40 on the season, where he could very well, with the number of games that Dunn has missed, end up leading the team in assists when the season comes to an end. But with that, let me know what you think down in the comment section below, who your 3 stars would be. I would imagine most people would probably have the same first 2, but the third star I think is really up in the air. What you thought of this game, what you think of some of the young players that we've seen play, and obviously the exciting signs of something here with Shane Wright that we saw towards the end of the inaugural season with Matty Beniers. Until next time, though, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!